My name is Katrina Hansen, and I'm 32 years old. If you'd told me a year ago that my entire life would collapse over a dinner bill, I would have laughed. But sometimes destruction doesn't come as fire, and thunder it comes as quiet words over candlelight. Nicholas and I met when we were both 27, wide-eyed and overconfident, trying to build something meaningful in a world obsessed with speed. He worked in marketing, the kind of person who called himself a brand architect before he even had a brand. I worked in tech project management, reliable, predictable, the person who remembered passwords, rent due dates, and renewal dates for his domain subscriptions. In our early days, it felt like partnership. I believed in his fire. He admired my steadiness. We built routines that looked like love-shared coffee mugs, late-night brainstorming sessions, post-it notes on mirrors with tiny affirmations. But somewhere between, I'm proud of you, and you don't dream big enough, the language changed. It started subtle, compliments that twisted into comparisons. Jade from my team just got promoted again. She reminds me of you, only more daring. I laughed it off the first few times. Everyone's allowed admiration. But eventually, admiration became measurement. Nicholas began to scroll through social media at dinner, showing me videos of real go-getters, startup founders, luxury influencers, the kind of people who post 5 a.m. gym photos and call it hustle. See, that's drive, he'd say, eyes still on his screen. I'd nod, pretending not to notice the implication. And you're not that. Still, I kept supporting him. When his father got sick, I covered rent so he could take unpaid leave. When he wanted to attend a marketing summit abroad, I dipped into my savings money meant for launching my own consulting business just so he could network. He came back glowing, overflowing with stories about visionaries and disruptors. I remember smiling, genuinely happy for him, even as a quiet ache settled in my chest. The cracks widened quietly. He started working late, then later. Team drinks he'd text, sometimes not coming home until after midnight. I trusted him until trust started to feel like naivety. Then came that dinner, the night the ground shifted beneath me. It was a Friday evening in early spring, and the restaurant was one of our usual spots downtown. White tablecloths, amber lighting, soft jazz, humming from ceiling speakers. A place that used to feel like ours. I remember I'd taken extra care getting ready that night, pale blue dress, light makeup, trying to recapture something I couldn't name. Nicholas arrived looking sharp as always. Dark blazer, expensive cologne, the kind that announces itself before he does. But his smile didn't reach his eyes. There was tension beneath it, something rehearsed. We ordered, talked about work, the weather, anything but us. Halfway through his steak, he put his fork down and leaned back. Katrina, we need to talk. Those 5 words have ruined more lives than any storm. I smiled faintly. Okay, what's wrong? He sighed like a martyr preparing for sainthood. You're great, really. You've been my rock. But lately I feel like you're holding me back. I blinked. Holding you back. He nodded like he was delivering wisdom, not betrayal. I've been thinking a lot about where I'm headed. My career's finally taking off. And I realized I could do so much better. I need someone who pushes me, who matches my ambition. The words landed like shards of glass. I could have argued, begged, cried. But something about the way he said it, calm, confident, final, froze me. I stared at him, my heartbeat a steady thud in my ears. So what are you saying, Nicholas? He hesitated for exactly 1 second, then shrugged. I've been seeing someone. Her name's Jade. From work. It just happened. She understands me, Katrina. She gets the pressure, the drive. The restaurant sounds dimmed, like the world went underwater. I studied him, the man I'd cooked for, supported, believed in, and saw only ego. You're cheating on me, I said quietly. He had the nerve to smile. It's not cheating if the relationship's already over. You checked out months ago. I laughed once, bitter and low. You mean after covering your rent, paying for your conferences, and holding your world together while you found yourself? Yeah, I must have missed the part where I checked out. His expression hardened. See, that's exactly the energy I'm talking about. Always guilt-tripping, always playing safe. I looked at him for a long time, something cold settling behind my ribs. You know Nicholas? I thought ambition meant building something together, not stepping on whoever helped you get there. He rolled his eyes, gesturing for the waiter. I didn't expect you to understand. Let's not make this dramatic. So I didn't. When this bill came, I slid my card onto the tray, paid it in full, then stood up my chair, scraping softly against the floor. That's it, he asked, almost offended. No fight. No scene. I smiled faintly. You want passion, Nicholas? You'll find it. Just be careful, fire burns. I turned and walked out before he could answer. The night air outside was cold, sharp, almost cleansing. City lights blurred as I walked toward my car, heart hammering, but strangely steady. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just breathed. By the time I reached the driver's seat, my hands were shaking. My phone buzzed a text from him. "You're really just walking away. This is why we never worked." I didn't reply. Instead, I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror, eyes, glossy lips trembling, and whispered, "Maybe it's time I stop working on you and start working on me." That night, I packed my essentials, left the apartment key on the counter, and drove aimlessly until sunrise. I didn't know where I was going, only that anywhere else was better than where I'd been. Somewhere between the dark and the dawn, it hit me this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of one hell of a comeback. When I woke up the next morning, the world felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful, just hollow. The kind of silence that follows a house fire. I'd spent the night at a budget hotel off the freeway, surrounded by stale coffee smell and flickering fluorescent light. My suitcase sat half open on the floor, spilling out a mess of folded clothes and regret. I remember staring at my reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror, whispering, "What now?" Nicholas's toothbrush used to sit beside mine. His cologne used to linger on my pillow. Now even his absence smelled loud. I took a deep breath, opened in my phone, and saw 3 new messages, all from him. Nicholas. We both said things we didn't mean. Nicholas. I just needed honesty, Katrina. Nicholas. Let's talk later. Maybe we can stay friends. I stared at the screen, then powered off my phone. Friends, no. Not after what he said. Not after the months I spent building him while he was already planning his exit. I took the rest of the weekend off work and just existed. Ate takeout, watched old comfort shows, cried and burst. So unpredictable, I started keeping tissues in every room. But grief has an expiration date, and mine arrived one Monday morning when I finally opened my laptop again. My to-do list glared at me, deadlines, project briefs, unpaid invoices. Life was still moving, so I moved with it. In the weeks that followed, I rented a small studio apartment near the edge of the city. 1 window, 1 bed, 1 desk, a place small enough that the silence couldn't hide. Therapy came next, an idea from a friend who gently suggested I might need to process. My therapist, Dr. Tran, had kind eyes and a voice like chamomile tea. She didn't tell me to forgive him. She told me to see him. "He didn't betray you out of love, Katrina," she said in one session, tapping her pen thoughtfully. "He betrayed you out of fear. People like Nicholas are terrified of being ordinary, and when you stayed stable, you became a mirror for everything he hated about himself." I sat there silent. That word mirror hit something deep, because I'd started noticing it too. His obsession with people who looked successful, not necessarily were successful. His need to be admired by everyone but the one person who loved him. Dr. Tran smiled softly. You can spend years wondering why he didn't value you, or you can start asking why you valued someone who didn't see you at all. That night I deleted his photos, not in anger, but in release. Every pixel gone felt like reclaiming air. Slowly I started remembering who I was before him. I'd always been ambitious, just quietly so. I dreamed of starting my own consulting business, helping startups streamline operations. But I'd shelved it because Nicholas said it wasn't scalable enough. Funny coming from a man who couldn't scale basic empathy. Now I reopened those old files. Business plans, client proposals, abandoned drafts. My laptop felt like a time capsule of the woman I used to be. I spent nights building a new version of my life, literally. Website, logo, brand, colors, even a motto. Structure is freedom. It was ironic. The same structure Nicholas mocked became my liberation. My first few clients were small, local cafes, freelancers needing workflow guidance. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Every invoice I sent felt like reclaiming a brick from the wreckage. Still, the memories hit, sometimes especially late at night. Flashbacks to the things I'd done for him. The time I pawned my camera to help him pay rent when his dad's hospital bills piled up. The way I'd stayed up proofreading his proposals while he slept beside me, dreaming about the applause he'd get. I used to tell myself that's what love was, sacrifice. Now I realized I'd confused sacrifice with self-erasure. One evening, about 2 months after the breakup, I attended a small networking event downtown. My business mentor had insisted, Katrina, you can't rebuild in silence. Get seen. Get connected. The room buzzed with casual conversations and the clinking of wine glasses. I introduced myself awkwardly at first, handing out my business cards like a teenager passing notes in class. But then something shifted. A woman from a software startup asked for my input on a project workflow issue. I offered a few quick suggestions and her face lit up. "You're good at this," she said. "Ever think about consulting full-time?" I smiled, working on it. That night I walked home lighter. For the first time in months, I wasn't defined by heartbreak, but by possibility. 3 weeks later, I got an unexpected message. Not from Nicholas, thank God, but from Tom, a mutual friend who worked in the same corporate building as him. "Tom Hay ran into your ex today, just a heads up. Things don't look great on his end." I hesitated. I wasn't sure if I wanted to know, but curiosity, that dangerous seed, took root. Tom called me that evening, voice low. "He's different. Rumor is, he's been taking credit for campaign ideas that weren't his. Some of the ones you helped him brainstorm, I think. People are starting to notice. His new girlfriend, Jade. Apparently she's been helping him pitch them as her team's concepts." For a moment I said nothing, just listened. "Anyway," Tom added, "I thought you'd want to know." I hung up, sat in silence, and exhaled slowly. Not satisfaction, just confirmation. The universe doesn't always punish loudly. Sometimes it whispers. That night I journaled until my wrist ached. Not about revenge, but about clarity. About how sometimes letting go isn't weakness. It's a warning to the other person that you're finally done absorbing their damage. I wrote, "Forgiveness doesn't mean I want him back. It means I no longer care if he ever looks back." And for the first time since that awful dinner, I slept through the night. Because deep down I knew one thing with certainty: Nicholas hadn't broken me. He'd just shown me how much stronger I could be once I stopped holding him up. By the time summer rolled around, I had grown comfortable in solitude. The studio apartment that once felt too small now felt like peace made visible, a space filled only with the sound of my own breathing, my own choices. No second toothbrush, no half-hearted apologies, no weight that wasn't mine to carry. Every morning began the same way, black coffee sunlight filtering through thin curtains, laptop open by 7 a.m. I'd lost the chaos of partnership, but found rhythm. My consulting business, Hansen Project Solutions, had grown from a side hustle into something quietly alive. One client turned into 3. 3 turned into 6. I wasn't rich, but the invoices cleared, and every new email felt like a small victory. I'd built something from nothing while Nicholas, well, I hadn't heard from him in months. Until one afternoon during a networking conference. Tom spotted me across the lobby, his usual warm grin fading into something unreadable. "Katrina," he said after the polite greetings, "you might want to sit down for this." I laughed lightly. "That's serious?" He nodded. "You remember those campaign ideas you and Nicholas used to bounce around? The ones you came up with, the micro-branding pitch and the emotional engagement model?" My stomach tightened. "Of course." "Well," he said, rubbing the back of his neck, "Nicholas has been passing them off as his own. He pitched them in a client meeting last quarter, landed a big project off it with Jade's help." For a second, the words didn't sink in. Then they did, heavy and sharp. My hands tightened around my coffee cup. "He used my work," Tom nodded. "Yeah, and rumor has it he's been spiraling. Management started catching on when he couldn't replicate the results. People in his department say Jade's already distancing herself." The image formed in my head. Nicholas in some glass-walled conference room, pitching stolen ideas with his too smooth smile, unaware that the floor beneath him was cracking. I didn't gloat. Not then. I just sipped my coffee quiet. Karma didn't need witnesses, it only needed patience. That night, as I drove home, the city glowed outside my car window, the same skyline I once thought I'd share with him. But this time it looked different. Not smaller, not lonelier, just mine. In the parking lot, I sat for a while watching the rain streak across the windshield. For the first time, I allowed myself to think about him without pain. Only recognition. Nicholas had always been a man addicted to momentum. He mistook chaos for progress. The higher he climbed, the faster he burned. 2 weeks later, Tom messaged me again. "Tom, you won't believe this. Jade dumped him." Tom. Apparently, HR got an anonymous tip about their office affair. Violated conduct policy. He's on probation. I blinked at the screen, then set the phone aside. The universe didn't need my applause. It was doing fine on its own. But a strange emotion simmered beneath my calm, not vengeance, not pity. Something quieter. Closure, maybe. As my business grew, new opportunities followed. I joined online panels, spoke at small events about independent growth after career burnout. Ironically, the lessons came from surviving Nicholas, though I never mentioned him by name. I became the kind of woman I once envied, grounded, articulate, self-sufficient. And yet late some nights I'd catch myself scrolling through his old social media just to see if he was still pretending everything was fine. The posts had changed. No more luxury brunches or motivational captions, just vague quotes about resilience, maybe a gym mirror selfie every now and then. He looked thinner, tired. I closed the app. I'd seen enough. A few months later, my company landed its biggest client, yet a mid-sized software firm, looking to restructure their project management process. The CEO, a kind but overworked woman named Hannah, said she'd found my website through a referral. "Your structure is freedom line," she told me during our first call that hit me hard. "I want that for my team." We signed the contract the next day. That evening, I sat alone at my desk and cried, not out of sadness, but from the strange realization that I'd finally built something untouched by him. Around that time, I started meeting new people again, mostly through work. One name that kept appearing was Richard Park, a freelance designer who partnered with several of my clients. He was soft-spoken, attentive, the kind of person who listened more than he spoke. We met for coffee to discuss a potential collaboration, but our conversation drifted far from work. We talked about failure, about people who outgrew us, about learning to breathe again after heartbreak. He smiled quietly and said, "Maybe we don't outgrow people. Maybe we just stop shrinking for them." Something about that line stayed with me long after he left. Weeks passed, and the Nicholas rumors kept trickling in, each one more pathetic than the last. He'd been passed over for a promotion. Jade had left the company. Some of his coworkers stopped speaking to him after HR confirmed the misconduct report. And then one afternoon, Tom sent one final message. "Tom, he's out. Fired last week. Word is he tried to start his own firm, but no one wanted to work with him." I read it twice, then set the phone down. No rush of satisfaction, no thrill, just quiet relief, like closing a chapter I'd already finished reading months ago. That night, I poured a glass of wine, lit a candle, and wrote in my journal. I thought revenge would taste sweet, but peace tastes better. A week later, I received an email from Nicholas. Subject line: "Hey Katrina, long time." I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. "Hi Katrina, hope you're doing well. I've been thinking a lot about how things ended. I realize now I made mistakes, big ones. Jade turned out to be someone I didn't really know, and well, it doesn't matter. I'm struggling, honestly. If you ever have time to talk, maybe we could grab coffee. No pressure, just closure." Closure, that word again. I hovered over reply for a moment, then closed the email. Instead, I whispered to the quiet room, "You don't owe explanations to the ghosts you've already buried." And as the screen dimmed, I smiled to myself. Because for the first time since the night of that dinner, I wasn't replaying what I'd lost, I was living what I'd found. The next time I saw Nicholas, he wasn't glowing with success, he was begging for help. The email sat unopened for weeks, buried beneath invoices and client updates. I never replied, though. Sometimes I hovered over the trash icon and paused. Not out of temptation, but because it reminded me that I had the power of silence. Silence had once been my weakness. Now it was my weapon. By autumn, my consulting business had doubled. Clients referred friends. Referrals became partnerships. Structure is freedom wasn't just a tagline anymore. It was a philosophy I lived by. Every time I looked at my growing spreadsheet of projects, I thought, he would have hated this. The quiet kind of success that doesn't need applause. Then one Thursday morning, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I let it ring out, but a voicemail followed immediately. "Katrina, it's Nicholas. I know I don't deserve to ask this, but please hear me out. Things have fallen apart. Jade. She used me, Katrina. Took my ideas, turned the team against me. I lost my job. I just need to talk to someone who actually knew me. Please." His voice cracked near the end, not the polished tone he'd used at dinner that night. This one was raw, strained, desperate. I didn't listen to it twice. I deleted it. Over the next few days, more messages followed, first polite, then pitiful, then manipulative. "You always saw the good in me. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just help. It's cruel to ignore someone who's drowning." Cruel. The word almost made me laugh. The same man who once said I was holding him back now claimed I was holding him underwater. Still, the guilt tried to creep in. It always does. That small, conditioned part of me whispered, "He's human. You used to love him. Shouldn't you care?" But Dr. Tran's words echoed louder. You can have empathy without access. So I chose distance. A week later, my friend Maya called. She sounded hesitant. Hey, I ran into Nicholas's brother at the gym, she said. He told me Nicholas is staying with their parents. He's not doing great. Keeps saying you're the only one who ever grounded him. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. Maya. I'm not his anchor anymore. He cut the rope himself. There was silence on the other end, then a soft, I know. Just thought you should know. The next message came through Tom. Tom, Katrina, not trying to drag you in, but Nicholas has been reaching out to everyone. Says he wants to apologize. Guy looks rough. You sure you don't want to hear him out once? Me, Tom, I already heard everything I needed to. He just didn't realize I was listening the first time. Tom, fair enough. Just thought I'd check. Tom was kind, always had been. But he didn't understand. People like Nicholas don't want closure. They want control. They crave redemption without the work that earns it. Then came the moment that tested everything I'd built. It was a rainy Tuesday evening, and I'd just wrapped a virtual meeting with a new client. I shut my laptop stretched and turned toward the window and froze. Nicholas was standing in the lobby of my office building, umbrella-dripping eyes wide like a man who'd forgotten how to knock. For a few seconds, I just stared, heart thudding. Then I grabbed my coat and went downstairs. He saw me before I spoke. Katrina, he breathed out, voice trembling. You actually came down. I crossed my arms. You showed up uninvited. What do you want, Nicholas? He took a shaky step forward. I know I shouldn't have. I didn't know where else to go. Jade. She destroyed everything. She told HR I was manipulative, said I harassed her. None of it's true. I lost everything, Katrina. I just need help finding my footing again. I kept my tone even. Help. Like when I covered your rent while you found yourself, or when I funded your conference trip so you could meet Jade in the first place. His face fell. That's not fair. No, I interrupted softly. It's finally fair. The rain outside made the lobby glass shimmer. He looked small beneath the fluorescent light, a man unraveling under the weight of his own choices. I miss us, he whispered. You grounded me. You believed in me. I didn't realize what I had. I tilted my head slightly. You realized it. You just didn't value it. He flinched like the words were physical. I'm trying to change, Katrina. I'm working on myself. I cut him off again, gentler this time. Nicholas, you're not my responsibility anymore. You were never my project. If you want to rebuild, start where you fell. Alone. Tears welled in his eyes. You're cruel. No, I said, stepping back toward the elevator. I'm consistent. He called after me as the doors began to close. So that's it. You're just walking away again. I met his gaze one last time through the narrowing gap. You taught me how. The doors slid shut. That night he texted me again, messages flipping between apologies and insults. You're heartless. You'll end up alone. Please just meet me one more time. I didn't reply. Instead, I took screenshots, then blocked his number. If I'd learned anything, it was that some people only respect boundaries when they hit a wall. Weeks passed, and I didn't hear from him. My world stayed steady, client calls, morning coffee, quiet evenings. And then, like life-rewarding silence, something unexpected bloomed in that calm. Richard, the designer. I'd met months before, started texting more frequently. First about work, then about life. He was thoughtful, never intrusive. He remembered details like my preference for lemon tea over coffee, or how I avoided noisy places. One evening, he asked, walk in the park after your last meeting tomorrow. I almost said no, instinctively guarded, but something in me whispered, say yes. We walked under the streetlights talking about everything and nothing. He didn't fill silences with pity. He just existed beside me, quietly present. It wasn't fireworks, it was peace, something I didn't realize I'd missed. By the time I got home that night, I saw an unread email notification. From Nicholas, again. Subject line, help me please. I hovered for a moment, then deleted it without opening. No hesitation this time, no second guessing, just certainty. Because for once I didn't feel like I'd lost something. I felt like I'd finally stopped giving away what was never appreciated. By winter, I'd stopped glancing over my shoulder. Nicholas had gone quiet, or maybe I'd just stopped noticing. Silence no longer meant waiting. It meant peace. Business was steady, my life finally stable, and Richard steady kind. Richard had slowly woven himself into the edges of my routine. Coffee breaks turned into dinners, dinners into weekends. He never tried to fix me. He just held space for what was left after I'd rebuilt. Then one day, I received an invitation that made my stomach twist. Tom's wedding. He'd been one of the few friends who stayed neutral after everything collapsed, never taking sides. We still work together occasionally, and when his email popped up with save the date, I didn't think much of it until I scrolled down to the guest list. There it was, Nicholas Carter RSVP confirmed. For a moment, the old version of me stirred the anxious one, wondering if she could handle seeing him. But then I looked around my apartment, my life, and realized I wasn't afraid. I hit accept. The wedding was held at a vineyard just outside the city. Late afternoon sun spilled over rows of vines, the air sweet with lavender and slow music. Richard and I arrived hand in hand. As we walked up the gravel path, I saw faces from the old days, mutual friends, ex-coworkers, even one of Nicholas's former teammates. Some gave polite smiles, others gave curious ones, as if waiting to see if there'd be a scene. There wouldn't be, not for me. Richard leaned close, whispering, "You okay?" I nodded, better than ever. The ceremony was beautiful, string lights, soft vows, laughter that didn't sound forced. For a few hours I forgot about him, until I didn't. Because when I turned toward the reception hall, there he was, Nicholas, standing alone by the bar glass in hand, wearing a suit that no longer fit right. His posture, slumped hair, unkempt eyes, darting around like a man who didn't belong anywhere. He noticed me before I could look away. For a moment, time folded in on itself. We were back at that dinner, same look, same need to control the narrative. But this time, I wasn't trembling. He approached slowly, forcing a smile. "Katrina, wow, you look amazing." I smiled politely. "Thanks, you too." He gave a quiet laugh, but it broke halfway through. "Didn't think I'd see you here. Guess we both still have some mutual friends." "I guess we do." He hesitated, eyes glassy. "Listen, I know this isn't the place, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. For all of it. For how I treated you. For not realizing what I had." I waited a beat, apology accepted. His brows furrowed slightly. Just like that. I shrugged. "It's been a year, Nicholas. Holding a grudge would be a waste of energy." He nodded slowly like he wanted to believe that was good news. Then his tone shifted, a pleading edge beneath it. "You know I've been trying to get my life back together. I'm freelancing now, but it's hard. Jade wrecked my reputation, spread rumors, told clients I stole her ideas. Everyone turned their backs on me. I stayed quiet." He leaned closer. "You've always had connections, Katrina. You could help me. Maybe recommend me to one of your clients just to get my foot back in the door." There it was, the real reason. The same old rhythm apology guilt request. I exhaled slowly. "Nicholas, I'm not in the business of rebuilding people who broke themselves." His face tensed. "You don't have to be cruel." "I'm not," I said softly. "I'm being honest. You made your choices. You built the fire that burned you." He blinked, anger and desperation flickering across his face. "You think you're better than me now?" I met his gaze evenly. "No, I just stopped needing to be worse to make you feel better." That silenced him. I turned slightly, feeling Richard's hand at the small of my back. He'd seen enough to understand everything without a word. "Let's get some air," Richard murmured. We walked toward the terrace overlooking the vineyard, the string lights glowing against the dusk. Behind us, I could still feel Nicholas's stare, heavy, defeated, but powerless. Later that evening, during the toasts, I saw him again standing near the edge of the dance floor, alone, watching everyone else laugh. His eyes met mine for a second, then dropped. And for the first time, I didn't feel bitterness or satisfaction. Just clarity. He hadn't been the villain of my story, not entirely. He'd been the lesson. As the music swelled, Richard held out his hand. "Dance with me?" I smiled, always. We moved under the canopy of lights, laughter mingling with the hum of conversation. And for the first time in years, I felt light, unburdened. Across the room, Nicholas turned away, blending into the blur of guests, until he was just another shadow in a memory that no longer hurt. After the wedding, I wrote a note in my journal. Closure isn't confrontation. It's peace, and peace doesn't need witnesses. I'd spent years mistaking endurance for love, silence for strength, and forgiveness for return. Now I understood real healing was indifference. He looked broken that night, but as I watched him fade into the crowd, I realized something profound. You can't rescue someone who enjoys the fall. The morning after the wedding, the sunlight felt different, not blinding, not soft, just true. I woke up beside Richard, the sound of rain against the window, steady and calm. For a long moment, I just listened. No alarms, no noise, no chaos, pretending to be ambition. Peace used to scare me. Now it felt earned. Richard stirred, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "You slept well," he said, smiling. "I did," I replied, surprised at the honesty of it. "First time in a long while." He kissed my forehead, then stood to make coffee. And as I watched him move around the kitchen, quiet, thoughtful, present, I realized something. I wasn't afraid of love. I was afraid of losing myself again. But Richard never asked me to shrink. He just made room. In the weeks that followed, life settled into something beautifully ordinary. My business expanded beyond what I'd imagined. I hired an assistant, a bright intern named Asha, and even rented a small office space. It wasn't grand, but it was filled with warmth plants on the windowsill, soft lighting, quiet music humming in the background. One afternoon, Asha looked up from her desk and said, "You're trending on LinkedIn, by the way." I blinked. "I'm what?" She grinned and turned her screen toward me. "Your blog post, the one you wrote about emotional boundaries and leadership, it's blowing up." I laughed softly, half in disbelief. I hadn't even meant for it to go viral. I'd written it one night out of reflection about how personal boundaries and professional success often come from the same muscle, the courage to say no. The title was simple: What I Learned About Leadership from a Broken Heart. Thousands of shares, dozens of comments, a speaking invitation from a leadership conference. It was surreal, but the irony wasn't lost on me. Everything Nicholas once mocked me for. The caution, the structure, the patience, those were the very things building my empire now. One evening, after a long day of meetings, I took a walk alone by the river. The city lights danced across the water, and in their reflection, I saw a woman I almost didn't recognize, calm, unhurried, free. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a notification, a message request, from an unfamiliar account, but the name beneath it made my stomach tighten. Nicholas Carter. He'd made a new profile. The message was short. "Hi, Katrina. Just wanted to say I saw your article. You were always good with words. I'm glad you're doing well. Take care." I stood there for a while, reading it under the amber streetlight. There was no apology this time, no manipulation, just finality. And strangely, that was enough. I didn't reply. I didn't block him either. I just let the message sit there, a ghost of something that once existed but no longer defined me. Months passed. My business took off faster than I could have planned. I spoke at conferences, led mentorship programs, and even started collaborating with Richard's design firm on joint projects. Our relationship wasn't built on dramatic decatrinations. It was built on quiet consistency. One evening, while reviewing slides for a seminar, Richard looked up and asked, "If you could go back to that version of you who walked out of that restaurant, what would you tell her?" I thought for a long moment, then said I'd tell her she didn't need to become anyone's mirror to be seen. He smiled. "That's very you." I laughed. "I guess it is." A few weeks later, I received one last update about Nicholas. It came from Tom again, almost in passing during a business event. "Remember your ex?" he asked casually. I nodded. He moved out of state, got a low-level marketing job somewhere small. Seems like he's keeping his head down. Guess he's rebuilding in his way. I smiled faintly. "Good. I hope he does." And I meant it. Not out of forgiveness, but out of freedom. His story was no longer mine to carry. That night, I stood on my apartment balcony looking over the city skyline. The same skyline that once witnessed my heartbreak now glittered like quiet applause. I pulled my journal from the small table beside me and wrote the final entry in a chapter I hadn't realized was closing. He chased better. I became it. I thought I'd lost everything when he left. But all I lost was the version of me who believed love meant losing myself. Now I know better. I closed the journal, placed it aside, and turned off my phone. The city lights shimmered in the distance, not a reminder of what I'd endured, but of everything I'd become. And somewhere deep inside, I could almost hear my younger self whispering back, "You made it." I smiled at the thought, then whispered the line I'd written 100 times, but never said aloud. He chased better. I became it.